Most people think being an alpha male is about dominance, ego, or controlling others, but that's not it. That version is loud and insecure. Real strength is quiet, controlled, and consistent. Real respect is never forced, it's earned through your actions. Anyone can look confident for a moment, but very few can stay disciplined, stay calm under pressure, and stay focused when it matters. That's where the real difference is made. If you want to become a man who is truly in control, it doesn't start with others, it starts with you. Your habits, your decisions, your discipline. Because if you can't control yourself, you can't control anything else. Let's break it down. Rule 1: Protect your energy. What you consume daily has a direct effect on how you think, how you feel, and how you act. Yet most people underestimate how much their environment shapes their mindset over time. The music you listen to, the content you watch, the conversations you engage in, these are not just small, random inputs. They are influences that slowly build your mental state, often without you noticing. If what you constantly consume is emotional, negative, distracting, or unfocused, it begins to reflect in your behavior. Your focus weakens, your discipline becomes inconsistent, and your energy starts to feel scattered instead of controlled. And when your energy is scattered, your actions become weaker, less intentional, and less effective. This is where the difference begins. A real alpha male is not someone who reacts to everything around him, he is someone who controls what he allows to affect him. He understands that his mindset is not random. It is shaped daily by what he exposes himself to. This does not mean avoiding emotions or disconnecting from reality. It means having awareness. There is a difference between experiencing emotions and constantly feeding them. When you repeatedly expose yourself to things that drain you, whether it's certain music, social media, or negative environments, you carry that state into your actions. Over time, this reduces your ability to stay sharp, think clearly, and move with purpose. Protecting your energy is not about isolation, it is about discipline and selection. It is about deciding what deserves your attention and what does not. Not everything should have access to your focus, because your focus is directly connected to your performance. A man who is in control does not give his energy to everything that tries to pull it away. He chooses what strengthens him, what sharpens his thinking, and what keeps him moving forward. This includes what he listens to, what he watches, and even the people he allows close to him. Because over time, your environment becomes a reflection of your standards. There is also a deeper level to this: control over your internal state. Even in situations where you cannot control the environment, you can control your response to it. This is where real strength shows. Anyone can stay focused when everything is easy, but very few can maintain control when distractions, emotions, or pressure are present. A true alpha male trains his mind to stay stable regardless of what is happening around him. He does not allow temporary emotions to dictate long-term decisions. He remains grounded, focused, and intentional. Over time, this level of awareness builds something powerful: self-control. Instead of being influenced by everything around you, you begin to influence your own direction. Your energy stops being something that is constantly pulled in different directions and becomes something you direct with purpose. And that is one of the core foundations of being an alpha male: not dominance over others, but control over yourself. Because once you control what enters your mind and how you respond to it, you begin to operate at a completely different level. Rule 2: Learn to let go. One of the hardest things a man can do is let go of people who are no longer right for his life, especially when there is history, emotional attachment, or familiarity involved. It is easy to confuse attachment with value, and comfort with alignment. But real strength is not about holding on to everything. It is about recognizing when something no longer supports your growth and having the discipline to walk away from it. Many people stay connected to the past, not because it is right for them, but because it feels familiar. And that familiarity can quietly keep you stuck in the same patterns, repeating the same situations without real progress. A man who is in control understands that not everything is meant to continue, even if it once mattered. He does not ignore the past or pretend it had no value. He respects what it was, but he does not allow it to control what comes next. This is where emotional discipline becomes important. It is easy to go back when things feel uncertain, when you feel alone, or when you start doubting your decisions. But going back without growth usually leads to the same outcome. Real clarity comes from being honest with yourself about what is no longer aligned, even when that truth is uncomfortable. Letting go is not weakness, it is control. It shows that you are not driven only by emotion, but by awareness and direction. A man who cannot let go becomes controlled by his past. His decisions become reactive instead of intentional. And his growth slows down because he keeps returning to what is familiar instead of moving toward what is better. But a man who can let go creates space for better connections, better opportunities, and a stronger version of himself. There is also a deeper level to this: self-respect. When you hold on to people or situations that do not align with your values, your standards slowly begin to drop. You start accepting less than what you know is right, and over time, that affects how you see yourself. Letting go, even when it is difficult, reinforces your standards. It reminds you that your direction matters more than temporary comfort, and that your growth requires difficult decisions. In the context of becoming an alpha male, this is essential. It is not about being cold or disconnected, it is about being clear and intentional. You do not chase what is not aligned, and you do not stay where you are not respected or growing. You move forward with purpose, even when it requires leaving something behind. Because in the end, real strength is not just in what you hold on to, it is in what you have the courage to release. Rule 3. Leave with strength, not weakness. Walking away is not always easy, especially when emotions are high, your mind feels uncertain, or you are in a low state where everything feels heavier than it actually is. In those moments, decisions can easily become reactive instead of intentional. You may feel the urge to leave quickly, to escape discomfort, or to distance yourself from a situation without fully understanding it. That reaction feels like control in the moment, but in reality, it is often driven by temporary emotion rather than clear thinking. And when decisions are made from that place, they tend to be incomplete. You leave physically, but mentally you remain attached, replaying the situation, questioning your choice, and feeling the weight of something unresolved. Real strength is not shown in how quickly you walk away, but in how clearly you understand when and why to do it. A man who is in control does not rush important decisions when his emotions are unstable. He creates space between what he feels and what he does. He steps back, regains control over his thoughts, and allows clarity to form before taking action. This does not mean avoiding the situation or delaying forever, it means facing it with awareness. It means understanding the full picture, recognizing what is no longer aligned, and then making a decision from a position of stability rather than pressure. There is a clear difference between escaping and deciding, and that difference defines the outcome. Escaping is emotional, it is fast, impulsive, and often unclear. It is driven by the need to avoid discomfort in the moment. Deciding, on the other hand, is controlled, it is calm, intentional, and final. When you decide to leave from a place of strength, there is no confusion attached to it. You know why you are leaving, you accept the outcome, and you move forward without needing to revisit it constantly. But when you leave from a place of weakness, the decision stays open in your mind. You question it, you doubt it, and part of you feels pulled back because it was never fully resolved internally. This is where emotional control becomes essential. Being an alpha male is not about suppressing emotions, it is about mastering them. It is about feeling everything without letting those feelings dictate your actions. Anyone can react in the moment, but very few can pause, stabilize themselves, and then act with clarity. That pause, that control, is what separates reaction from leadership. It builds confidence, because you begin to trust your decisions. You are no longer controlled by situations, you are controlling how you respond to them. There is also a deeper layer to this: self-respect. When you leave with strength, you are reinforcing your standards. You are showing yourself that your decisions are based on clarity, not emotion, and that your direction matters more than temporary feelings. Over time, this builds a stronger sense of identity. You become someone who does not act impulsively, but intentionally. Someone who does not run from situations, but understands them and then chooses what to do next. In the end, leaving is sometimes necessary, but how you leave determines what you carry with you afterward. When you leave with strength, you close that chapter with clarity and move forward without hesitation. When you leave with weakness, you carry that situation with you mentally, even after you are gone. And that is why control matters, not just in your actions, but in the state of mind you choose before you act. Rule 4: Don't waste energy on the wrong people. Not everyone deserves your attention, your time, or your energy, and one of the biggest mistakes a man can make is giving those things away too easily without thinking about the cost. Many people move through life reacting to everything around them, every opinion, every comment, every bit of negativity, without realizing that each reaction drains something from them. Your attention is not unlimited, and your energy is one of your most valuable assets. When you constantly engage with people who bring distraction, drama, or negativity into your life, you slowly lose your ability to stay focused on what actually matters. You may feel active, involved, and busy, but in reality, you are not moving forward. You are just being pulled in different directions instead of choosing one. A man who is truly in control understands that attention is a resource, and like any resource, it must be managed with discipline and awareness. He does not feel the need to respond to everything, defend himself in every situation, or prove his value to people who do not matter. This is not about arrogance or acting above others, it is about clarity and self-respect. It is about knowing what deserves your time and what does not. When you lack that clarity, you become reactive. You get pulled into unnecessary arguments, distracted by opinions that have no real impact on your life, and emotionally affected by people who are not even moving in the same direction as you. There is also a deeper level to this: standards. The way you spend your time and energy reflects what you tolerate in your life. If you constantly give attention to people who are negative, unfocused, or disrespectful, you are slowly lowering your own standard, even if you don't realize it in the moment. Over time, this shapes your environment, and your environment begins to shape you. You start thinking like the people around you, acting like them, and accepting things you once wouldn't. But when you become more selective, when you start choosing where your energy goes, you begin to raise your standard. You stop chasing validation, you stop explaining yourself unnecessarily, and you stop engaging in things that do not align with your direction. Another important layer is emotional control. Most people waste energy not because they have to, but because they feel the need to react. Someone says something, and they immediately respond. Someone disagrees, and they feel the need to prove a point. But a strong man does not operate like that. He understands that not every situation deserves his reaction, and not every person deserves his attention. Sometimes the strongest response is no response at all. Silence, distance, and focus are often more powerful than engagement. Walking away from unnecessary conflict is not weakness, it is discipline. It shows that you are not easily influenced, not easily provoked, and not controlled by external noise. There is also a long-term consequence to where you place your energy. Every moment you spend reacting to the wrong people is a moment taken away from your growth, your goals, and your progress. Over time, those small losses add up. You may not notice it immediately, but they create a gap between where you are and where you could have been if your focus was directed properly. This is why being selective is not optional, it is necessary if you want to move forward. In the context of becoming an alpha male, this is one of the core traits. Real strength is not about being involved in everything, it is about choosing your focus with precision. It is about directing your energy toward growth, purpose, and meaningful actions instead of scattering it across distractions. Because in the end, your results are directly connected to where your attention goes. And if your attention is constantly being wasted on the wrong people, your progress will always stay limited, no matter how capable you are. Rule 5: Learn, don't repeat. Everyone makes mistakes, and that is not what defines a man. What defines him is how he responds to those mistakes once they happen. A mistake, on its own, is not failure. It is feedback. It shows you where you were unprepared, where your judgment was off, or where your discipline was not strong enough. But the real problem begins when the same mistake is repeated over and over again without awareness. That is no longer just a mistake, that becomes a pattern. And patterns, when left unchecked, begin to shape your behavior automatically, influencing your decisions without you even realizing it. Over time, those patterns form habits, and those habits define your results. A man who lacks awareness will go through the same situations repeatedly. Blaming circumstances, blaming other people, or convincing himself that things will somehow be different next time without making any real change. But a man who is in control takes full responsibility. He does not rush to forget what happened or distract himself from it, he studies it. He reflects deeply, not just on what went wrong, but on why it went wrong. He looks at his mindset, his emotions, and his decisions in that moment. This level of honesty requires discipline, because it forces you to confront your own weaknesses instead of avoiding them. But without that level of awareness, growth does not happen, only repetition does. Learning from mistakes requires more than recognition, it requires transformation. It is not enough to say, "I won't do that again." Because without a clear change in behavior, the same conditions will lead to the same outcome. You have to adjust the way you think, the way you respond, and the standards you operate by. This is where most people fail. They understand their mistakes, but they do not change their actions. A strong man closes that gap. He builds better habits, sharper awareness, and stronger discipline so that when the same situation appears again, he responds differently without hesitation. There is also a deeper layer to this: identity. When you repeat the same mistakes, you begin to see yourself as someone who lacks control. You lose trust in your own decisions, and that slowly affects your confidence. But when you actively learn and adjust, you begin to rebuild that trust. You start seeing yourself as someone who improves, adapts, and evolves. That shift in identity is powerful, because once you believe you are someone who learns and grows, your actions begin to align with that belief naturally. In the context of becoming an alpha male, this is essential. It is not about being perfect, it is about being aware and adaptable. It is about refusing to stay the same version of yourself when you know better is possible. A weak mindset repeats the same patterns and hopes for a different result. A strong mindset studies those patterns, breaks them with intention, and replaces them with better ones. It understands that growth is not automatic, it is a decision that has to be made repeatedly. Over time, this creates a clear separation. While others stay stuck in cycles of the same mistakes, the same reactions, and the same outcomes, you begin to move forward. You become sharper in your thinking, more disciplined in your actions, and more controlled in how you respond to situations. And that is what builds real confidence, not words, not appearance, but proof. Because in the end, growth is not about avoiding mistakes, it is about refusing to repeat them, and becoming stronger every time you face them. Rule 6: Control your emotions. Emotional control is one of the clearest signs of real strength, yet it is also one of the most overlooked. Most people are not truly in control of their emotions, they are controlled by them without realizing it. They react quickly, speak without thinking, and make decisions based on how they feel in the moment rather than what is actually right. The problem is that emotions are temporary, but the consequences of actions taken during those moments are often permanent. A single reaction made in anger, frustration, or pressure can damage relationships, opportunities, or progress that took time to build. Over time, this creates a pattern where life is not directed with intention, but shaped by emotional reactions. A man who lacks emotional control becomes predictable, reactive, and easily influenced by everything happening around him. A man who is in control operates differently, not because he doesn't feel emotions, but because he understands them. He recognizes that emotions are natural, but they are not instructions. Anger, frustration, stress, and pressure are signals. They show that something is happening internally, but they do not decide what action should be taken. Instead of reacting immediately, he creates space between what he feels and what he does. That space is where control exists. It gives him the ability to pause, think clearly, and respond with intention instead of impulse. This is what allows him to stay stable even when situations are unstable, and focused even when distractions or pressure are present. This level of control does not come from ignoring emotions or pretending they do not exist. It comes from managing them. It requires awareness, the ability to recognize when you are not in the right state to make a decision. It requires discipline, the ability to pause instead of react. And it requires practice, because control is not built in one moment, but developed over time through repeated situations where you choose clarity over impulse. Most people react first and think later, but a strongman reverses that pattern. He thinks first, even when it is difficult, and acts only when his mind is clear. Emotional control becomes even more important in moments of pressure, conflict, or uncertainty. Anyone can stay calm when things are easy and going their way, but very few can maintain control when things are not. That is where real strength is tested. When you are challenged, when someone disrespects you, or when things do not go as expected, your first reaction will always be emotional. But your response, that is your choice. And that choice defines your level of control. A man who reacts loses control of the situation. A man who responds with awareness keeps control of himself, and that is what truly matters. There is also a deeper impact of emotional control that goes beyond the moment. It builds long-term respect and internal confidence. When you are stable in how you act, people begin to trust your presence. They see that you are not easily shaken, not easily provoked, and not controlled by external situations. More importantly, you begin to trust yourself. You know that no matter what happens, you will not act in a way that weakens your position or creates regret later. That builds a different kind of confidence, one that is not based on appearance, but on control. In the context of becoming an alpha male, emotional control is not optional, it is foundational. It is what separates reaction from leadership, impulse from discipline, and weakness from strength. It allows you to stay focused while others get distracted, and to stay grounded while others lose control. Because in the end, if you cannot control your emotions, you cannot fully control your actions. And if you cannot control your actions, you cannot control your direction. That is why mastering your emotions is not just part of strength, it is one of the core elements of it. Rule 6: Stay consistent. Discipline is not about intensity, it is about consistency, and this is where most people quietly fall behind without even realizing it. It is easy to start strong when motivation is high, when the idea is fresh, and when the energy feels real. In those moments, action feels natural. But that state never lasts. Motivation fades, distractions appear, and discomfort begins to show up. This is the point where most people slow down, stop, or shift their focus entirely. Not because they lack ability, but because they were relying on emotion instead of structure. Consistency, however, operates differently. It does not depend on how you feel on a given day. It is built on a decision, a commitment to continue regardless of mood, energy, or temporary resistance. And that decision, repeated over time, is what creates real strength. A man who is in control understands that progress is not created in moments of intensity, but in patterns of repetition. He does not wait until he feels ready or motivated to act. He moves because it is part of who he is becoming. He builds routines that remove the need for constant decision-making, and habits that keep him moving even when his energy is low. Over time, this creates momentum, and momentum reduces resistance. What once felt difficult begins to feel normal. What once required effort becomes automatic. And this is where consistency becomes powerful, not because of what you do once, but because of what you continue to do over time without stopping. The danger of inconsistency is that it rarely feels serious in the moment. Skipping one day feels small. Delaying something important feels harmless. You tell yourself you will get back to it later, and in that moment, it seems reasonable. But repetition works both ways. Just as consistent action builds progress, consistent inaction builds stagnation. One missed day becomes 2, then 3, and eventually, the structure you started with disappears completely. This is how progress is lost, not through failure, but through gradual disengagement. A man who understands this does not ignore small breaks in discipline. He corrects them quickly, because he knows that patterns are always forming, whether he is aware of them or not. There is also a deeper effect of consistency that goes beyond results. It shapes identity. When you show up repeatedly, especially when you don't feel like it, you begin to see yourself differently. You stop identifying as someone who depends on motivation and start becoming someone who follows through. That shift builds trust in yourself. You no longer question whether you will act, you expect it. And that expectation becomes confidence, not the kind that is spoken about, but the kind that is built quietly through evidence. In the context of becoming an alpha male, this is one of the core foundations. Real strength is not found in occasional effort or temporary discipline, it is found in what you do consistently, even when it is unnoticed, even when it is difficult, and even when there is no immediate reward. Because in the end, your life is not shaped by what you do once, it is shaped by what you repeat. And consistency is what turns actions into results, and results into identity. Being an alpha male is not about being louder, more aggressive, or trying to prove yourself to others, it is about control. Control over your energy, your emotions, your decisions, and your actions. It is built in the small moments, in the choices you make daily, and in how you respond when things are not easy. Anyone can act confident when everything is going well, but real strength shows when there is pressure, distraction, or uncertainty. That is where discipline, consistency, and self-control become real. At the end of the day, this is not about becoming better than other people, it is about becoming better than your old patterns, your old habits, and your old mindset. It is about building a version of yourself that is focused, stable, and intentional in everything you do. Because once you learn to control yourself, you stop being influenced by everything around you, and you start directing your life with purpose. And if this video gave you real value, don't just watch, apply it. Start with one thing and stay consistent. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay connected for more content on discipline, mindset, and self-control.